Three, two, one.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast.
From Philadelphia to Los Angeles
And everywhere in between.
filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio.
It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Deven covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Nittany No Huddle podcast. I am your friendly coach, Devin Whitfield, hanging out here today. Me and Zach. Jordo had some obligations today. Obviously, we know he's serving our country and doing a lot of great things, so we couldn't really talk to him. But we're going to get rolling here today. Zach, we're talking all about Maryland, and hopefully it's a pretty quick one. So I'll turn it over to you. What are your initial first impressions of Maryland?
Sure. And I think before we get into any specific players, what really stood out to me was one of the things I like to look for in these types of matchups is just some like big picture things. What's the glaring weaknesses? What are the glaring strengths? And oddly for me, if you look at just starting with points per game on offense and defense, defensively, Penn State's given up 21 points a game. Maryland is giving up 24. So slight advantage to Penn State. Offensively, Penn State is averaging 34 points a game. Maryland is averaging 31. Slight advantage to Penn State. And even if you go, you nail down a little bit deeper than that, we'll start with the defensive side again. Penn State has been slightly better in rush defense, giving up 127 yards per game compared to Maryland's 137. And then almost the exact same thing on the as far as pass defense. Penn State's giving up 235 yards a game to Maryland's 239. Then if you flip over to offense, same exact thing. Penn State on as far as passing offense is third in the Big Ten, averaging 265 yards per game. Maryland is fourth, averaging 260. Finally, rushing offense. Penn State is number, give me a second here, number 6 in in the Big Ten in rushing offense at 183, and Maryland is right behind them, 7th in the Big Ten. So just from a surface level standpoint, I think it's maybe a bit closer of a matchup statistically than a lot of fans would expect. Maryland comes in here at 6-3. Their last game at Wisconsin was not a great one. I think we all knew that was kind of a bad matchup for Maryland.
Agreed.
Wisconsin is just the style of play, especially offensively, to Maryland's defense, that they're not well suited for that. So I don't think they're going to see quite the run grading offensive line and run game that Wisconsin had out of Penn State. But at the same time, after what Penn State did to Indiana on the ground, I think if you're a Penn State fan, you look at the Wisconsin tape and think, we're going to come in and we got to run the ball, right? This is going to be a game where we want to really establish the run, keep Tagovailoa and his targets off the field, and use the ground game to your advantage. So, it's just one of those things statistically where I think this is maybe a closer game than a lot of people are accounting for. How healthy Tagovailoa is a key, obviously, because I think he's played pretty well when he's been healthy this year. And one of the things we can certainly get into this in more detail with some of the running backs, but I think it all starts with their run game. It's a little deceiving. Their two top backs combined are averaging about 6 yards a carry. But there's been some games where they've struggled to run the ball. Wisconsin was one of those. Michigan was another one. So it's sort of like they're very hot and cold. When they run the ball well, I think it just opens everything up for Tagovailoa, and he can really, really play well. But like most quarterbacks, when they're not running the ball and teams can kind of pin their ears back and come after the quarterback, he's had some struggles as well. And even sticking with the theme of the closeness and statistics between Penn State and Maryland, if you look at Tagovailoa's stat line, about the same yardage, his completion percentage is a little bit better. 14 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's very similar. Even the QB rating is very similar to Clifford. So it's just one of those things where I think he's good enough that if you do not get enough pressure on him and you don't make him work for everything, he can beat you. But as we saw last year in the Penn State at Maryland game, he threw a pick 6. Penn State's pressure was getting to him. He was clearly getting flustered and was kind of complaining at his receivers. So it's one of those games where, if you let him get going, it could turn poorly for Penn State. But I think if the defensive front shows up like it did at Indiana, there's a chance to really make some hay in terms of the defensive secondary.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. The one thing that I really saw watching that Wisconsin game is how much pressure they were able to get on Tagovailoa and just really shut down any sort of offense. They had 189 yards of total offense in that entire game, and you hear that, and the first thing I look at is your favorite stat, Zach, is time of possession. Oh, they only had 189 yards. They probably just weren't on the field enough. Well, they won the time of possession. They were actually on the field longer than Wisconsin. I know it was only a minute or whatever, but still, it says a lot about how much they struggled. They could only manage 9 first downs against Wisconsin. They had to punt 8 times. They really struggled. And reading some beat reporters from Maryland, looking at Jeff Erman, he's a good follow on Twitter. That was weird. But I'm back, and it's still recording. So, what was the last thing you heard me say there,
You
Zach?
you were introducing us to Jeff Herman.
Oh yeah, Jeff Erman. He's a good follow on Twitter. He covers Maryland football, and he said that obviously as a beat writer, he goes to every game, has covered them for a while, and he said it was just by far their worst performance that he's seen them have in several years. And I think that started with that much pressure. And you look at Tagovailoa's stats. I mean, he's 10 of 23 for 77 yards. Obviously, I think the weather played into that game. I don't remember off the top of my head if it was that was a rainy game, right? I feel like when I was rewatching it that it was raining and it wasn't just the wind like the Ohio State situation. I think there was rain in that game too, at least heavier at times. So he really struggled, couldn't pass the ball, and I think the other thing that really stands out is, as Zach likes to point out, sacks count against your rushing yards. He had negative 31 rushing yards. I know for the game he ended up positive 19, and he is a mobile quarterback, Tagovailoa, that is. But if you have negative 31 yards, it's because you're getting sacked a lot. So, like you said, I think if we can bring as much pressure defensively, Adisa Isaac, Tarberton, Mustafa, these guys up front that have been playing really well the last few weeks, Chop Robinson, if we can get pressure on him and force him to be uncomfortable, I think that's the big key in the game. Because if we let him stand back there and pick us apart, I think they have enough weapons offensively, and we've seen that at times this year, that they have enough weapons. And I know Raheem Jarrett was injured last week. The last report, again, to all of our loyal followers, we do record pretty early in the week. The last I heard, it sounds like he's going to be go. Could change come Sunday or Saturday, but Raheem Jarrett's their leading wide receiver. If he's out, I think that changes some things, but then they have 5 other guys that have at least 20 catches on the season. So they're willing to spread the ball around. They're willing to use their running backs. So it's really, to me, going to come down to pressure from Penn State defense. So, Zach, do you have any other comments about Maryland offense versus Penn State defense?
No, I think you hit on most of the key guys. I mentioned at the beginning about the running back, so I wanted to just jump back to them.
Yes.
Roman Hemby is their lead back. He's got 121 carries for 747 yards, which is an average of 6 yards, which is really good. Like I said,
Yeah.
a lot of it's come in bunches. He has 7 touchdowns. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out their backup running back, Antoine Littleton II, who is a 6 foot, 285-pound true freshman. He's got 53 carries for 317 yards and has really come on this season. 6 touchdowns, also a 6 yards per carry average. So that's a guy to watch when he's in the backfield. From the little bit I can tell, he's kind of their short yardage back. That's a big running back. That is a big running back to bring down. So
That's like Tank Smith.
So they've kind of got a bit of like the lightning and thunder going on. And you mentioned Tagovailoa too. And for me, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't watched a ton of their games since his injury, but he is a pretty athletic, elusive guy. And one of the few weaknesses I think you saw from the Penn State defense last week at Indiana was early in the game, Jack Tuttle was doing a really good job of just escaping the pressure. And then we brought a lot of sort of man blitzes where there just was nobody home and he escaped. And frankly, most of Indiana's offense in the first half was Tuttle scrambling. It'll be interesting to see if Manny Diaz, I think he's going to definitely bring pressure because you've already got a somewhat wounded quarterback it'll be interesting to see if they continue with that jailbreak style, or if we kind of game plan a bit of a spy or something to try to keep that quarterback scramble from hurting us. It'll just be interesting to see, because he is athletic, but you wonder with the knee injury that he sustained a couple weeks ago, how much running do they really want to put that type of stress on him?
Yeah, I totally understand that, and I'm with you 100%. Obviously, like I said, I didn't watch the entire Wisconsin game, as evident by me questioning whether or not I remember it raining, which I feel like it was, but everything
It
kind of
was a
blurs.
wintry weather day all across the Big Ten
Yeah,
country. It
so
appeared
and
from what we
everything
could
kind
tell.
of blurs together whenever it's not Penn State related. So you know who's going to call blizzard warning is the perfect fan of ours to let us know if it was raining and windy and I'm just crazy or what I saw. But anyways, I think that's pretty good for the Penn State defense. Really think that secondary is going to have opportunities. I think they're going to end up throwing it a lot because of the situation that they're in. And I think our run defense has been so much better since the Michigan game. It's had to be a point of emphasis since then because it has been a lot better. So I think our secondary is going to have chances to make some plays and do some impressive things. So we'll hope that's the case for Penn State's defense. So flipping over to Penn State offense versus Maryland defense, Zach, the number one key for Penn State's offense in order to win this game.
As far as Penn State's offense go, I think
Yeah.
it's a lot like the Indiana game, where you come in and you establish the run. I haven't looked ahead at the weather. I don't know if it's going to be another crazy windy game like
I
the
think it's
Indiana
supposed to be
game.
nice.
But even if it's a nice game, like I said earlier, I think Maryland has some offensive talent. They've definitely got the skill players. They've got more talent than Indiana has, that's for sure. So I think you come in, it's a home game, you want to establish the run. I think you one of the things we don't really know is how these injuries are playing out on the offensive line. But what was pretty reassuring last week was the fact that we were dealing with that and still able to run the ball should bode well for whatever combination is out there, knowing that there's confidence in some of the backups, that no matter how you have to slice and dice that offensive line. Because I think everything sets up, it's kind of cliched football, but everything sets up off of that. Because I think Sean Clifford is a better quarterback when you have that run game dialed up. Some of those play action passes, especially to the tight ends down the seam, those were because linebackers are just getting sucked in, because we were consistently getting 4 and 5 yards every run. So I'm looking to come out of the gate in the first couple of drives and really just establish that run, work, especially Katron Allen, but even Singleton, get both backs into the game and just kind of make your presence known in the run game early and often.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Looking at Maryland's defense, I think their strength is their secondary and even to some extent their linebackers. So we have got to take advantage of the running game that we've been able to establish over the last couple of weeks. I think this is a Katron Allen type game, in between the tackles, picking up 5 yards every time. And then you come in with Singleton, like you've been saying the last couple of weeks, like come back with Singleton there in specific situations to try to catch them off balance whenever they're subbing weird and getting tired and that kind of stuff. But I fully expect Katron Allen to have a huge game. I think he is the key factor this weekend in taking care of Maryland, because Sean Clifford's thrown 4 interceptions over the last 3 games, all in the first quarter. Not great. So can we maybe keep him in check for the first quarter? Although for whatever reason, he does seem to play better after he throws an interception. He throws one and then he kind of makes better decisions, because it's almost feels like he's forcing it, gets an interception, and then realizes, oh, I'm still Sean Clifford. Maybe I should calm down a little bit. Whether that's true or not, we'll see. Also, we definitely can't move on without mentioning he's 16 yards away from breaking the school record for passing yards. Yeah, he's 75 years old, but it's still a pretty big accomplishment to break Penn State's all-time passing record when you think about some of the great quarterbacks, especially in the 80s into the 90s that Penn State has had. Kerry Collins comes to mind real quick off the top of my head. So that's a big accomplishment. That'll be cool to see what they do, if they do anything about it, or if they just flash something quick on the Jumbotron. I'll be at the game on Saturday, so if any of our fans are there, make sure you come say hi. I will probably boo Clifford whenever he breaks the record. I'm just kidding. I couldn't do that. But either way, hopefully he can just stay in check and we can run the ball. I think for Maryland's defense, the 2 names that really stand out to me looking at stats and looking at numbers. It's their two safeties. They've earned the nickname the Reapers, according to some reports. The one Maryland website I've stumbled across today. Both are first-year starters. Both are juniors that have never started a game until this season, and that's Bo Braid, who by far leads the team in tackles, which is never usually a good sign if your safety is your leading tackler, especially by almost 20 tackles over the second best tackler. And then their third leading tackler is the other part of that Reaper safety crew that they're calling, just Dante Trader Jr. The two of them have combined for right at 100 tackles, 4 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. So wherever they're helping over the top, I think is dangerous. And maybe we can run some I don't mean trick, but like run some of that motion stuff that we've been running lately and get some Brenton Strange touches, get some Theo Johnson touches whenever these safeties are really helping over the top. Any thoughts on that, Zach, or those safeties? Or
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think the tight ends, you saw a lot of different stuff at the Indiana game. You saw some bubble screen action. You had Theo Johnson tiptoeing the sideline and almost scored on that play.
We had a bubble screen to Brenton Strange, which sounds so strange.
You had a couple shots down the seam to both. I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the Brenton Strange catch, which was a strange catch, but was also just an awesome catch. And how he caught that, I don't know. You had Theo Johnson with a nice seam route. You had Theo Johnson down the sideline on a ball that Clifford put right in his hands, right at the pylon. And just, he was like, it was one of those things where he was so open. I think it was somewhat jarring for him. And you actually had so much time and so much room to make the catch that it like made him nervous. But in any event, he got redeemed, and I think he scored. He scored one of the Aller touchdowns on a play action bootleg out of the backfield. So yeah, those guys, I think you continue to use those guys. I think it's a little, earlier in the season, we were like, where's Theo Johnson? And I know he was dealing with some injuries, and Franklin doesn't talk about injuries, but he's really come on the scene. I think he has 10, 11, or 12 catches in the last couple weeks. I think he's a guy we could have used. It kind of feels like a lost year for him, just in terms of it. We didn't really see him get going until the middle of the season. Who knows? But he's definitely a guy that when he's healthy, I think he's a mismatch. I think he's a matchup problem, especially, the Ohio States and the Michigans that have linebackers that can run with him, safeties that can run with him. But a lot of these other teams in the Big Ten, they don't have a guy that's his size. And if they do, he can't run with him. And if they have a guy that can run with him, he's probably not his size. So it's one of those guys that if you're Mike Yurcich going into the game, you sit down with Clifford and like, hey, let's talk about 2 or 3 tight end routes that we really love. What are a couple of plays that we really want to script and make sure we're feeding this guy the ball and getting him involved in the game plan. But I kind of got us off gear there, but a little bit as far as the defensive guys that I was looking at, I'm with you. I think the safeties are big playmakers for them. I'm actually looking at Jayshawn Barham, who is a freshman middle linebacker for them.
That's a good one to point out.
He's got 41 tackles, so he's third on the team in tackles, and he's got 3 sacks and a pass defended and forced a fumble. So I think that's a big ask for a freshman to be your middle linebacker, but it appears he's got some talent and he's really responding. And I think another name, you mentioned a couple of the safeties. I think Jacorian Bennett is their go-to corner. He's a 5th-year senior. He's had a pretty good year as well, and he's put up some stats. He's got 35 tackles, which is maybe a lot for a corner, but he's got 9 passes defended. So that tells me he's been seeing a lot of action. And then just as far as their defensive front, I think maybe that's one area of weakness. But the guy that stands out, just looking at the stats, is Greg China Rose, defensive end. He's got 4 sacks. He leads the team in sacks. So those are a couple names to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I'm totally with you there. So I think that kind of wraps us up. We're trying to be, if you watched our last podcast, we kind of told you we're trying to trim things down a little bit with Jordan being so busy and myself with basketball and stuff. So I think right about 20 minutes for this preview. I think that kind of puts us where we're at. I'm also going to add in, because Jordan's not here, a good friend of mine, Derek, is going to join us on the podcast. So before we give our score predictions for the Indiana game, let me get him on the horn here. He'll be going to the game with me on Saturday. So if you do come say hi to me, you'll also see this bearded freak.
That's me. What's up,
Hey,
guys?
Zach, hey, Derek, how's it going, man?
Let's go.
It's going. All right. So we're just about to do our pregame predictions. I know you said you did some research during your day at work because, who does work at work?
Well, I'm a supervisor, and everybody knows supervisors don't work. So
Yeah, exactly. So do you have any thoughts on the Maryland game before we go into our score predictions? Did you see anything, or maybe what's a key player that you think for Penn State is going to have a really good game other than maybe Sean Clifford, who always sucks?
It's always Clifford. It all runs through Clifford, unfortunately. Hopefully, he can just get us a couple of W's end the season on so we can get to Aller next year and see what we can do.
See, this is why Derek's one of my best friends, because we're both on the Aller train. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So, Zach, you want to kick us off? What is your score prediction for Saturday's game? Again, that's a 3:30 kickoff on big old giant Fox.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be somewhere around Penn State 31, Maryland 21. I think, and I started the show by referencing how statistically these teams are actually a lot closer, I think, than most people would realize. Maryland, and I look at the Michigan game as a comparable. Yeah. Maryland went up to Michigan, and the style of play that Michigan has is the type that you think they just run all over Maryland. Maryland's built a little bit more for speed, and they've got a lot of athletes, but maybe not the they don't have the big uglies on the line that Michigan has, but they played really well, and they frankly didn't get pushed around by Michigan. So between that and just knowing they do have some skill players, they've got some running backs, they've got 5 or 6 wide receivers that have all caught 20 passes or more. I think they can score. I think they're going to score. I think defensively they may struggle if Penn State comes and plays the type of game they played at Indiana and is able to run the ball. So it's a game I think it might be closer than people will expect. But I do think Penn State should have enough offensive firepower. Again, specifically that running game, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton should be enough to pull it away in the end.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I'm actually going to go a little wider on my margin. I think Penn State's riding some hype right now, playing so well against Ohio State. I really wish we could have stole that win. And then last week, just really after that first quarter, it was complete domination. So I'm going to go Penn State 34, Maryland 14. I think it could be a similar game where it starts a little slow. Maryland's kind of in the game. But I hate to say it because it'll probably make us end up losing, but Maryland's kind of like that little brother to the South, that the whole Michigan State thing. It's just, we have to beat them, and we have to beat them by a lot, or else it's kind of disappointing. So, guest picker Derek, what do you think about Penn State, Maryland? What's your score prediction?
I had a lot of the same points as Zach had. Statistically, very close team. They gave Michigan a way better game than we did. I know one of Maryland's losses was Purdue, which first game of the season, Penn State very easily could have had that loss too.
Absolutely.
Last week, Tua's brother got his little return game in preparation for us. I have it actually 31-28 Penn State. But that being said, if Maryland gets a good jump off in the game, I think they win big actually. So I think it's going to be a big first quarter. See what happens.
Interesting. Maryland big, Derek says, if they start out strong.
I think if they get a touchdown or 2 lead to start, Clifford's going to try to overdo it, and he's just going to throw the game away.
I can't really say I disagree with that. Obviously, the Allen Homer pick right here. So,
and I think the difference between Maryland and Indiana is they have a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, we want to get the pressure on him and do what Wisconsin did and do what Penn State did last year. But if we don't, he can play. And I think Indiana's quarterback situation is such that it kind of didn't matter. They probably just weren't going to have enough offense. But Maryland, to Derek's point, if they come out and have a good first quarter and we don't respond to that, I think Tagovailoa is going to have a good day.
Yeah, and Tuttle was playing really well before that injury. Obviously, I think I forget exactly what the score was when he went out, but it wasn't over whenever he went out. Was it 21-7 or 20?
I think it was either 14-7 or 21-7. I think we had taken the lead by the time he was out, but
yeah, but I think it was still 2 scores. So that game might be a lot different if Tuttle doesn't get hurt. I don't know if it's 45-14 if he stays in. So could be a big one on Saturday. I think Maryland is really solid, even though I just picked us to win by 20 points. I think Maryland is a really solid team, so we'll see how it goes. So we'll see. So let's transition here to our top 10s. I'm going to flash Jordan's here at the bottom. Jordan did send in his top 10, although he didn't send in his pick'ems, but we'll get them for the standings. We'll get them later this week. So Jordan's top 10 is Michigan at 1, Georgia 2, TCU at 3, Tennessee at 4, Oregon at 5, Ohio State down to 6, Ole Miss at 7, UCLA at 8, Utah at 9, and Penn State he has back into the top 10. Maybe a little bit of a hot take, but what's a Jordo top 10 without some hot takes? So, Zach, I'll let you go and kind of dive into more detail on those teams in your top 10. And as always, his whole top 5 is scrolling across the bottom.
At least he was able to fill his top 10 with actually 10 teams, because I know
he did send without one. So
he struggles with that. But I think everybody probably has Georgia number 1 at this point. I think we all made fun of them when they struggled when, frankly, should have lost to Missouri, and they had an ugly game with Kent State, but they seem to be rolling at this point and seem to be the class of the SEC. I've got Michigan at 2. I was catching flack in the comment section because of my treatment of Ohio State after the Penn State game, but I feel vindicated after their showing at Northwestern. That was not good, and I don't care how bad the wind was blowing. Northwestern's giving up more rushing yards in the Big Ten than anybody, and Ohio State again couldn't really move the ball on the ground. So that said, I have them at number 3, but I feel like Michigan has earned the right to be ahead of them in the rankings, and it'll be interesting with the college football playoffs ranking coming out tomorrow, because I don't understand this love for Ohio State that we're seeing at this point. So anyway, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, TCU I think has to move up to number 4 just by virtue of the losses. Tennessee, I think, has to stay at 5 in terms of the best one-loss team, just because they have the best win, Bama, and their loss is is to the number 1 team.
Yeah.
So they get I think they're gonna get to kind of stay pretty high up because of that. I've got Oregon at 6. I've been beating the drum for Oregon, as Devin knows, for weeks now. I think they're the best team in the Pac-12, and it wouldn't surprise me if they run the table and make the playoffs. I've got LSU at 7. I don't really like jumping them up that high, but I think their resume, even with the additional loss, is more worthy than UCLA or USC or Ole Miss, some of these other one-loss teams, just because, they've got that extra loss, but they've got the wins to back it up. They've got the Ole Miss win, and they've got the Bama win. Now, both of those were at home, and they got killed by Tennessee at home. So I want to see them they go on the road at Arkansas this week. Arkansas is not great. LSU should win that, but I would not be shocked if Arkansas gave them a good game. And then just to round out my top 10, I've got UCLA 8, USC 9, Ole Miss 10. I think those teams are all pretty close, but it's sort of there's a lot left to play for all of them, so they all have a chance to move up.
Yeah, and where do you have Penn State, Zach?
I have Penn State at 13, so I've got Utah 11, Bama 12, Penn State 13,
Gotcha.
ahead of Clemson and North Carolina, both of the one-loss ACC teams.
I'm with you. So I'll try to keep mine a little quicker here. I have the same top 8, just slightly different order. So I have Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2. I have TCU at 3 ahead of Ohio State. I think Zach crushed it. That I don't care if there's 600-mile-per-hour winds. Northwestern cannot stop the run, and Ohio State could not run. And yes, I know whatever his name was out. Was it?
Henderson was out,
Henderson
which is hilarious because in the Penn State game, all you heard in the comment section was, "Oh, Mayan Williams is out." So congratulations for shutting down Travion Henderson. Like it matters. They're all a bunch of 5-star running backs. It shouldn't matter. But
with him out, no excuse. You have to be able to run the ball against a team like Northwestern. Obviously, that's why we don't have Penn State as high, because they didn't look as good against Northwestern either, and because Penn State's not that good. And I think we kind of see that Ohio State has some flaws. Again, at the end of the day, whoever wins the Big Ten is going to the Big Ten, or is going to the college football playoffs. So I don't think it really matters. Tennessee is at 5. I'm with you. I really wanted to put Oregon at 5 and Tennessee at 6. But Tennessee has a better win than Oregon. They both have the exact same loss in the state of Georgia to Georgia. But Tennessee has a better win over Alabama than Oregon's best win. So I kept them ahead of them. LSU at 7, best 2-loss team, although we may see in our pick'ems that they might be a 3-loss team. We'll see. UCLA at 8, Ole Miss at 9, and Utah at 10. So I have Utah ahead of USC, mainly because Utah beat USC, even though Utah has that really head-scratching loss to Florida that we've covered a lot on here. So first game of the season, gross weather, it's Florida. So I have Utah up there. I also have Penn State at 13, ahead of Clemson, ahead of UNC. So that's my top 10, top 25 at the bottom. Derek, very quickly, who do you think is the best team in college football right now, and why is it Georgia?
Well, it's got to be Georgia. I mean, defending national champs, putting it to everybody. There's no other option at one. It's got to be Georgia.
I'm with you. And that's a good transition here into our pick'em standings. So at the bottom, you can see that the three of us, well, me, Zach, and Jordo, not a good week in the pick'em standings. Jordo somehow had the best week and only got 3 out of 8 correct. So that's not a good sign. Zach and I both went 2 and 6. So Jordo creeped up one game on Zach. Like I said, Jordan didn't get a chance to send in his pick'ems here this week before being busy, before us recording, but I'll make sure I add him in the comments. I can roast him for being wrong. And for Derek's sake, here's our guest picker standings, since we're basically college game day here. Alex was 6-2, Jesse was 3-5 during Ohio State week, and Tim rounding out the rear at 2-6. So you can't be worse than 2-6. Tim's a loyal follower to the podcast, so we can roast him every week.
6-2 is a tough ask, but that's a pretty good.
That is, I mean, 6-2. He was on fire that week.
I think that's actually the best week that any of us have. I don't even think I've been 6-2, and I have a winning record in the standings so far.
If I've won 6 games in 2 weeks, it's usually a surprise.
So we'll have to bring Alex back and even that out, because we can't have
definitely.
that.
So, Zach, I'll turn it over to you to give us our games, give us our spreads, and whatever order you want us to pick them in.
All right. Well, we'll start off with the game that everybody circled months ago in the Big Ten West, I'm sure, for the Big Ten West title, ostensibly. Purdue at number 21, Illinois. Basically, if Illinois wins this game, they lock up the West. Deven, who do you got?
I have Illinois in a bounce back. I think they looked really bad against Michigan State. Arguably, maybe was looking a little bit ahead, thinking about that Big Ten championship, or West championship, which isn't really the Big Ten West championship. So I'll go with Illinois. I think they get a little bounce back here.
Derek, who do you got?
I also have Illinois. Purdue couldn't score last week. Don't think they score this week.
So it's going to be a clean sweep. I'm also going Illinois. I think both teams had ugly losses last week, but I trust Illinois' grit and running game a little bit more. I mean, Purdue to get nothing going at all at Iowa was pretty surprising, because we know what Iowa is. So as much as I love Purdue and as much as I'd like Purdue to be good to benefit Penn State's schedule, it just seems like it hasn't really materialized for them. Next game's a big one. Number 10, Alabama at number 11, Ole Miss. And despite the fact that they're only ranked one spot apart in the AP poll, Alabama is favored by 11.5 points on the road.
Wow.
So we'll go reverse order. I'll start out. I'm going with Alabama as much as I don't like it. I think Ole Miss is a little bit overrated. They lost to LSU. They haven't played Bama yet. They didn't play anybody in the non-con. So I just don't think haven't really been – they beat Kentucky, basically, was their biggest win. And you never want to play Nick Saban. What's that?
Who is floundering? Kentucky.
Right.
Kentucky
is
really not
a great win. Yeah. I mean, I think Ole Miss is pretty good, but I think they're kind of like the Penn State of the SEC this year. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
They're not elite. And I think you never want to catch Nick Saban's Alabama team after a loss. That is the worst case scenario. I think they win. I think they cover. We'll go Derek.
I actually have Ole Miss.
Ooh, I like it.
I think 11.5 at home. That's pretty disrespectful. Alabama could easily be 5-4 right now with close games with Texas A&M. Narrowly escaped. And a little statistic there for the 2 straight losses for Bama with Saban. Has not happened since 2013, where they lost the last game of the season and the bowl game against Oklahoma. Last time they lost 2 straight in the regular season was 2007, his first year as a coach in Bama, where they also had a 4-game losing streak. Do you think it happens?
This is why we got Derek on the podcast. Ooh. Those stats are killing it.
Do you think it happens this week, though? I have Ole Miss.
You convinced me. I'm going Ole Miss. I think Alabama is solid, but they are not the Alabama that they have been. I think Bryce Young is an excellent quarterback. I think he is really, really good college quarterback. I don't think he ever materializes in the NFL just because of his size. but they don't have as good of weapons as they have had for him to throw it to. And their defense is very suspect. I picked them to cover last week at LSU, and they really let down. So I'm off. I'm going Ole Miss.
I like it. And great stats from Derek. And not even just the multiple losses in the regular season, but I don't recall a year, and you kind of hit this too, where they've had 4 or 5 games where you can say like they could have lost that game. Like normally Alabama might lose like one game in the regular season where they just don't play well, and they pretty much like murder everyone else. They have looked really vulnerable in a lot of games, and I don't think you can just dismiss that. So even though I went Bama, I get where you guys are coming from. Here's a sneaky good game in the American Conference. Number 22 Central Florida, coached by Gus Malzahn, at number 16 Tulane, who is in the driver's seat in the American. Tulane is a 2-point favorite at home for what it's worth. Derek, who do you got?
I have UCF. I think the offense is going to be a little too much defense, but yeah, definitely got UCF in this one.
I like it. I'll go next. I'm also going UCF. I really like Gus Malzahn. I think he's a good coach. I think Auburn is sort of getting their just due for moving on from what was a guy that did a pretty good job for them. And I think Tulane is sort of new to this scene. I think they're going to be ranked fairly high in the CFP rankings tomorrow, and the pressure of the moment might be a little bit too much. So I'm going UCF. Not
so fast, my friends. I'm going Tulane, riding that green wave. I have Tulane all the way up at number 15 in my rankings this week. That it sucks that Kansas State win is now kind of tainted the last few weeks because they have kind of looked not as great as they kind of were. But Tulane is doing a lot of really good things. They're really balanced on offense. They can pass the ball, they can run the ball, and their defense does enough to keep them in these American games. That sure are they going to beat any Big Ten team other than maybe Nebraska? I don't know, but Tulane's doing a lot of good things, and I want them to keep winning, and I want them to screw some things up in the New Year's Six. So I'm riding the green wave.
I like it. Well, speaking of teams that Tulane could probably beat in the Big Ten, to your point, we'll go on to the high scoring affair that is sure to be Wisconsin at Iowa. I will go first. Both teams. This is sort of the inverse of the Purdue-Illinois games. Both teams coming off pretty good wins. Against decent competition. Iowa, of course, beat Purdue, and Wisconsin beat Maryland. I'm going Iowa, if for no other reason than it's at home, and I feel like this is two teams that are matched up pretty well. I could see this game being like 12-11 or something. Just a lot of defense and a lot of running the ball. I'm going Iowa. Devin, who do you got?
I have Iowa also. You said 12-11. I'm thinking it's the first one to score wins. I think it's 3-0. That's my prediction. Yeah. 3-2, maybe even get a nice safety in there. So I'm going Iowa. This game will be one that I will not watch.
Derek, who do you got?
I also have Iowa. Just their defense at home, low scoring. Let them have it. We've played at Iowa before. They're tough at home anytime. So I
like it. A clean sweep for a team that's averaging like 7 points a game this year.
Yeah.
But their defense is, we've talked about this before, their defense is really good. I think it's not just like it's good compared to their offense. It's actually just really good.
Yeah.
Here's a big game, 2 ranked teams, big game in the Pac-12. Sneaky number 24 Washington team that's kind of hanging in there as far as the Pac-12 race at number 6 Oregon. Devin, who do you got?
What was the spread on this again, Zach?
What I saw was Oregon 12.5, which struck me as a lot.
Oregon covers. I think Oregon. Bo Nix is my Heisman front runner. Bo Nix is doing. If you take away that Georgia game, Bo Nix is having one of the greatest seasons by any quarterback in the last 10 years. His statistics are right at the top with anybody, especially if you take away that Georgia game where he had 4 interceptions. Which just imagine if he could have that game back and redo that one now. But I'm on the Bo Nix hype train. I think he is killing it, and I'm so glad that he left Auburn to do this because it just makes it that much funnier to me. So I got Oregon by 1,000,000.
Derek, who do you got?
I actually have Washington. I'm going to take Washington in this one. It's going to be a shootout. They can both throw the ball around. I think Washington gets it done. It's going to be close.
No.
I like it. I think Washington has the offense to hang around and make it a game. think a lot of the teams Oregon has been beating up on in the Pac-12 just don't have the firepower. And Washington won a nice gritty game last Friday night at home versus Oregon State. But I'm going with Deven on this one. I think Oregon is just on a mission right now. I think Bo Nix is playing really well. Just to get back to making fun of Auburn, how cool would it be to see UCF be the Group of 5 team in the New Year's Six with Gus Malzahn as a head coach, and Bo Nix maybe in New York at the Heisman ceremony making the playoffs. Just rough times if you're an Auburn fan. But I'm going Oregon. I really right now, gun up my head, if I had to pick the 4 teams to playoffs, I think Oregon's going to be one of them. I think they're going to run the table in the Pac-12 and be in the playoffs. So because I just said that, they're probably going to lose to Washington. But couple games in the Big 12 coming up here. We'll start with number 23, K-State, who is scuffling a little bit, but I still think it's a pretty decent team, at Baylor, who we've kind of left for dead, but is still alive in the Big 12 race because they still have K-State, TCU, and Texas all left on the schedule. So a tough schedule, but they have the teams that they need to beat to get back into the race. Baylor is a 3-point favorite at home. I'll go first. I like K-State. I've been high on K-State all year, but I think Baylor has just kind of been hanging around, and they've got a chance to really muck things up in the Big 12. And I think they're a tough team. They've got a good coach. I really like Dave Aranda. I think it's a close game. All year long in the Big 12, these teams are all really solid. I've just been mostly picking the home team because I think they're like toss-up games and just kind of favor the home team. So I'm going Baylor. Deven, who do you got?
I have Baylor as well. They are playing big football, and it's at home. I mean, other than that one game last week, it's like you said, the home team just finds a way to win in these Big 12 games. Everybody is so even. I think 1 through 7 in the Big 12 is all just super even, and it comes down to a couple plays here and there, and usually you get those plays when you're at home in front of your crowd, and that's why the home team ends up winning. So I've got Baylor super tight, maybe even a last-second score, or in Jordan's last-second score with 5 minutes to go.
Derek, who do you got?
I also have Baylor. Sweep there. So
no crazy stats from that one.
I do not have any crazy stats for that one. We'll just leave it Baylor there.
Okay.
I like it. We'll stick in the Big 12. This is kind of a big game. Number 4, Texas Christian at 18. Well, it's Texas, so I mean, is it a big game if Texas is in it? But so we got number 4 TCU at number 18 Texas. Keep in mind, Texas is still very much alive in the Big 12, despite all the stuff that we make fun of them for. Just from what I saw, Texas is a 7-point favorite over the currently number 4 undefeated TCU Horned Frogs. We'll start with Derek. Who do you got?
I have Texas in this one. Been in a couple close games. Took Bama to the end. I got Texas in this one at home.
So I like that, and I'm also going Texas. I think TCU strikes me as that team that you see every year climbing up the rankings in November, and they've just kind of been scraping by everybody. I mean, they could have lost to Kansas. They were down big to K-State. They're due. They're just due.
They were down big to OK State.
Yeah, I like TCU. I think they are good. I'm not saying they're a fraud. I just think the Big 12 is too tough to continue to put themselves in that position where they're just winning by the skin of their teeth. And I think Texas, as much as I don't want to say it, I think Texas is pretty good. I think they've once they got Quinn Ewers back, they've been a different team. I'm going Texas. I don't like it, but I'm going Texas.
So I had every intention on the first time in my life ever not going horns down. Can't do it. Horns down. Horns down. TCU it is.
I like it.
I swear I was actually going to pick Texas, but then you both did. So
yeah, I mean, it was a good.
Jordan will do it too. So
good opportunity for a 1-for-2, and
number 4 team in the nation.
Well, TCU is going to be one of those teams that'll benefit from the bigger playoff, but
yeah, I'm with you.
They have no business being in there with 4 teams.
I get
that.
And
honestly, they might be better off because they have such a cushion that they're going to be in the Big 12 title game probably either way. If you're TCU, would you rather lose this week and then finish strong and win your last 2 in the regular season and then win the Big 12 title game, or go undefeated and then have your last game before the playoff is announced be a loss.
True.
They might not make it in either way with one loss, but I almost feel like you'd rather lose on the road at Texas and then gain some momentum and win your last 3. You'd rather not lose any games, I guess, but if you had to lose one. So finally, I guess we have to have one ACC game in here. Number 15, UNC, who only has one loss, still alive, I guess, theoretically for the playoff, at Wake Forest, who has really been sliding. I'll go first. I'm going Wake Forest. I've been kind of high on Wake all year, and I know they're not good, but they're just like that feel-good story in the ACC that you have to pull for. I think they've been pretty good at home, though. And I think UNC is kind of a fraud, and I just think they're due. They just keep winning, but they lost to Notre Dame back when Notre Dame was actually bad, not like before they beat Clemson when they were losing to Marshall. So I like Mac Brown, but I'm going Wake Forest. Devin, who do you got?
Yeah, my internet's not working great. I was gonna look up to see what Wake is at home because I'm with you. I feel like they play better at home. I was on the Sam Hartman train. You guys all know that, all our followers, and Zach, I thought he was having a great season, and the last 2 weeks have not been good. So I'm going to take UNC. I don't necessarily like it because I want to like Wake Forest. I want them to be good, the fighting Tim Duncans, but I'll go UNC, I guess. It's basketball season.
Derek, who do you got?
Didn't look into this game at all. Saw the UNC on the matchup. Big Duke fan. Big win over Jacksonville today. I hope UNC loses at everything. Taking Wake Forest by 100.
Yep. Knew that was coming.
So you're one of the many Penn State football, Duke basketball fans.
Oh yeah,
both of them.
Did they at least cover the spread? Because I saw they were only favored by like 15, and I threw some money on that because that just didn't seem like enough.
They did. I think it ended up 77-41 or something like that. I think it was only a 15-point spread or something like that. Definitely covered.
I don't like Duke winning, but as long as they make me money while they're doing it, I'm okay with it.
Fine.
So that wraps up the 8 games. Devin, I know we normally do a super dog. You maybe didn't make Devin or Derek aware. But...
Yeah, I didn't tell. I'm a horrible host. That's Jordan's job. I didn't tell Derek to have a super dog. But you can go ahead, Zach, with yours if you want.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit off the grid, which we seem to normally do. I've got North Texas, who is 5-1 in the Conference USA. They're on the road against UAB, who's 2-4 in Conference USA play. Somehow UAB is favored by 6. I don't know if there's like some major injury or something North Texas is dealing with, but that just seems like an odd line to me. So I'm going with North Texas to cover and win on the road at UAB.
Yeah, and so obviously you can see the standings at the bottom. I am far and away in last place in our pick'ems, but for whatever reason, I am killing it with super dogs right now. I've got 5 in a row, 4 outright winners, and the only one I didn't get was UConn losing by 2 points. So I'm feeling pretty content on these super dogs. Was a little lazy today, didn't quite check out all of the games I wanted to, but the one that stood out, I got West Virginia. West Virginia gonna take it to Oklahoma. They are 8-point underdogs at home in the backwoods of country roads, and they're gonna be singing all night long whenever they beat Oklahoma. So I got Oklahoma losing to the Mountaineers. That's my super dog.
I'll also say, just as we wrap up here, I hinted at it earlier. I think I'm going to pull the trigger. It's not a super dog because the spread's only 3 that I'm looking at, but I'm calling that LSU goes onto the road and loses in Fayetteville to the Hogs.
I'm with you. I forgot it wasn't a pick'em. I did kind of tease that it was a pick'em. We ended up not doing that one. We went another direction. But I'm with you. LSU is going to lose this weekend and just screw everything up.
It just seems like the high of beating Bama is so high that how do you get ready for the next week?
Right.
And how do you focus, especially going on the road? We'll see. Maybe they'll prove us wrong and spank Arkansas, but it just seems like an opportunity for a huge letdown.
Yep. All right, boys. You got any other comments or anything else Penn State related? Put our scores back at the bottom here. Let's see who gets it right. Again, I'll add Jordan's pick'ems to the chat. Zach has the 3-game lead. Looking at it, it looks like Zach and I picked the same 1, 2, 3, 4, only 5 times. So I at least got 3 that I can try to get an advantage on here. So that'll be nice if I could actually do something good for once, but we'll see. And Derek's just trying to beat 2 and 6 at this point. 6 and 2 isn't even worth it. Just got to beat Tim.
Oh, we're going for the 6 and 2, but
okay. I'm sorry. So sorry.
as long as we're not last, you're right. It's all good.
Yeah. So anyways, thanks Nittany No Huddle Nation. Appreciate all the likes and follows. Make sure you comment, make sure you follow, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram. Derek and I will be at the game on Saturday, so make sure if you see us and you want to be on the podcast, just come say hi, and I promise you I'll record you and put it on Instagram. I guess. I don't know. I have a microphone, one of those little microphones. I use it at school whenever I make TikToks. So I'll bring that along, and I don't know. We'll just interview some random Penn State fans that are enjoying some adult beverages. So I think that'll go ahead, Derek.
That broken record this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. I think that will wrap us up. Again, thanks to everybody. Make sure you roast Jordan in the comments since he's not here. And we will see you. Oh, I guess I should say, I don't know if we'll do an instant reaction on Saturday. It'll just depend on cell phone service at Beaver Stadium for Derek and I. If I have good enough service and Derek feels like driving my car, I guess I'll record while he's driving. If the internet's not great, we'll probably just skip this one because we'll
do one from inside the stadium, like right after the game.
I would love that. I just know I'm not going to have cell phone service. That's the problem. So we'll see. If there's service, I'll just stay in my seat the whole time and do it. Actually, maybe we'll just start in the fourth quarter. Then it's really loud. It'll be great.
Get some interviews from people in the stands, and
yeah, exactly. We'll figure something out. Yeah, should be good. So, anyways, thanks, Nittany No Huddle Nation. See you next time.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast.
Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.